When it comes to elite-level gymnastics, men and women are capable of slightly different things. Of course, both sexes are all perfectly capable of putting on world-class performances, but some events suit the women better than the men and vice versa. But who does it best? Today we're discussing the differences between men and women when it comes to gymnastics. But who does it better? Stay with us to find out. First up, let's discuss the floor exercise. Watching the floor exercise when it comes to gymnastics, you will probably have noticed first and foremost that the women compete to music, whilst the men do not. And this isn't the only difference between the men and the women. The women's exercise includes things like leaps and jumps, which are all judged and scored on, whilst the men's exercise doesn't. The guys make up for this by including more tumbling skills, which typically include moves which need a little more strength. Whilst the women's routines obviously need strength, they tend to be a little more dance-orientated, even going as far as to tell a story on occasion. If we were to look at results on the floor from the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo, every man who won a medal finished with a higher score than the female gold medalist, who was Jade Carey with a score of 14.366. Wu Tongxiao finished in the bronze medal position for the men with 14.766, whilst Raider Lee Miguel Zapata finished second with a score of 14.933. Interestingly, the winner of the men's competition, Israeli gymnast Artem Dolgopiat, finished with the exact same score as the silver medal athlete from Spain, but was awarded the gold thanks to performing a higher difficulty score. When these scores are taken into account, it would appear that the men are better at the floor exercise. But of course, the gymnasts are performing different skills, so it's difficult to judge. What do you guys think? Next, we're talking about the vault. Stay tuned. Don't worry, this event is where the girls make up for their slightly worse performance than the men on the floor in Tokyo. And just like the floor, there are a few key differences between the girls and the guys. Whilst they're using the same table to perform the event on, the men usually have the table at a higher height than the women. Also, the men usually perform slightly more difficult vaults than their female counterparts, such as the handspring double vault or the Sukahara double back, whereas the women tend to stay away from these more technical vaults. Before they change to a table, due to safety concerns, the men and women both used to use a vaulting horse. The ladies would vault over the center of it, whilst the men would perform lengthwise. Whilst the men had the upper hand at the 2012 Olympics in London, the ladies have brought it back over the past couple of Olympic Games, with Simone Biles scoring 15.966 to win gold, compared to North Korea's Si-Gwan Ri, who won gold with a score of 15.691 in Rio. And the women performed even better at Tokyo 2020, even with Biles pulling out of the event. Her compatriot Michaela Skinner finished with a silver medal with a score of 14.916, whilst Brazil's Rebeca Andrade finished in the gold medal position with 15.083. Both women scored higher than the men's gold medalist, South Korea's Jae-Hwan Shin, with 14.783. What is your favorite gymnastics event? The bars are up next. Stay with us. Of course, this one can't really be judged fairly, as the women perform on the uneven bars, whilst the men take part in the parallel bars and high bar events. The bars themselves consist of a few key differences, with the uneven and parallel bars made out of fiberglass with a large diameter, whilst the high bar is made of metal and is a smaller diameter. Whilst women in general have slightly smaller hands, it could be argued that with their event featuring the larger diameter bars, this is a more impressive feat. Gymnasts use different hand grips for different bar events, but it can be dangerous to use the wrong one, so they need to be very careful when performing. At Tokyo 20, male gymnast Jingyuan Zhou scored a mighty impressive 16.233 to take gold on the parallel bars, whilst Belgium's Nina Derval finished top of her class to take gold with a score of 15.200. Deika Hashimoto finished in the gold medal position for Japan on the horizontal bar with a score of 15.066. As we mentioned, it's very difficult to compare men and women on the bars, but what we should remember is that the women's event features two sets of bars, which are about 6 feet away from each other, both at different heights as the name suggests, which for our money seems a little more difficult. Which bar event do you guys prefer? Let us know below. We're talking the competition format now. Don't go anywhere. This event is probably the most similar across both the men's and women's competitions, with both teams featuring 4 gymnasts, which has actually decreased from 7 gymnasts pre-2000 and 5 gymnasts from 2000 to 2016. Of course, gymnasts qualify for the final based on their scores in the qualifying rounds, which is the same across both the men's and women's formats, whilst only 2 gymnasts per country can qualify for each specific event final. The rules are also the same across both competitions. Traditionally, the male gymnasts score much higher than the female gymnasts across the team competition formats, with the men usually scoring in the high 200s during the Olympics, and the women generally scoring in the high 100s. The same trends also seem to be true in the individual all-round events. At Tokyo 2020, Daiki Hashimoto finished the all-around with a score of 88.465, whilst his female counterpart, Sunisa Lee, finished with a score of 57.433. The Japanese men dominated again, as they so often do in Rio back in 2016, with Kohei Uchimura finishing in the gold medal position with a score of 92.365. This was in stark contrast to Simone Biles' score of 62.198. Of course, the all-around events contain slightly different exercises for each sex, which could be the reason for the huge difference in score. But at the end of the day, the women's events are still incredibly difficult. What do you guys make of the competition differences? So what should we make of all this? Let's discuss. Well, there is a school of thought out there that suggests we shouldn't make anything of this whatsoever, as men's and women's gymnastics are barely the same sport. At the 2016 Olympics in Rio, USA Today columnist Nancy Armour criticized the U.S. men's team for finishing in a pretty decent 5th place in the team competition. When you take into account the teams they were up against, the gymnastics behemoth that is Japan, as well as Russia and China, then the results start to look even better. She said the team needed to take a leaf out of the U.S. women's team book, who finished first, but her comments that the men should be held to the same exacting standards mean nothing. The men compete in 6 events, whilst the ladies compete in 4, and there is only really any sort of overlap in the vault and floor exercise events. So to suggest they should look to the women's team for pointers is quite far wide of the mark. I mean, even in the floor exercises, there are a ton of differences, with the women's team focusing on dance aspects whilst the men do not. It is more difficult for the men to draft a team, but even when they can, the two sports shouldn't really be compared, as there are just far too many differences. What we would be better doing is simply appreciating each sport and gymnast for what they are, which are superstars, if you ask us. What do you think? And finally, some cute news to report. 2008 Olympic balance beam gold medalist Shawn Johnson recently uploaded a video of her young daughter, who appears to be following in mom's footsteps. Shawn's 2-year-old daughter, Drew, was filmed meeting her old gymnastics coach, whilst kitted out in a pretty cool-looking sparkly leotard. The video, which the 10-time career gold medalist uploaded to YouTube, was captioned with, "This was such a special day at Drew Hazel East, met my gymnastics coach and played in the gym. We decided to make a full at YouTube video out of it." Given how successful mom was when it comes to gymnastics, it shouldn't really come as any surprise that her young daughter is showing some prowess when it comes to the sport, and maybe, just maybe, we will see young Drew representing Team America in an Olympic Games in the future. If she does, we wouldn't bet against her finishing in the medal positions, especially given the wealth of experience she has so close to home. What do you guys make of Shawn's cute post? Give us your thoughts below. As usual, thanks for stopping by today, and remember to join us again next time when we will be discussing all sorts of other cool bits and pieces. And why not do us a solid by liking and sharing today's video with any gymnastics enthusiasts you might know of. Bye guys.